Do you know, it's been a busy week. My MD decided to go off on holiday, but not really holiday, after dicking about at a golf game for like 2 days at the end of last week. So I've had a lot of stuff to pick up, really.
But I've been thinking that we're living in a world that has a distinct lack of community. The immediate thing that we could talk about is mental health, but I also actually think it could make better workplaces even for physical safety. If we cared enough about our fellow worker, would it in so facto make a better workplace?
So a lot of people that I speak to see resilience as being kind of like an elastic band stretching. But actually, resilience is not about the stretch. Resilience is about the stretch and the return back to normal.
That's when you're challenged, like when you're surrounded by people that think what you do is a massive pain in their ass and it's stupid and it's over the top and it just stops me doing whatever I need to do, because people that don't think that that brand doesn't still exist are naive.
Yeah.
It well and truly does. I literally am surrounded by small businesses and trade-based businesses, construction-based, every single day, and it exists.
When I get a new starter coming to any business, or kind of I'm working with a client that has a new safety team type of thing, and they say, oh, hey, what should I learn? Like, oh my God, do I need to go on XYZ courses? But legitimately, there's only 3 things that I feel any safety professional that's coming in really needs to do, and it's build rapport, understand business and functional context, and set clear expectations with stakeholders. What do you think the barrier is, kind of not allowing the safety community to flourish in the way that you might kind of see a different profession kind of coming together? Do you have an example of actually a profession that you kind of look at and think that is a tight-knit community?
I do think the trade community is a tight-knit community. They just all can relate to each other and they can all have a conversation, or they're a really tight-knit community.
Do you think that safety is too tribal to have the same level of cohesive community? Like, for example, as far as I'm aware, there's no plumber that's going around saying, I'm doing plumbing differently because I don't agree with plumbing what. And I've tried plumbing too, but I want to do plumbing differently. Do you think that with HOP, with behavioural safety, with safety 1, with safety 2, with doing even something as simple as, I came from doing knee wash versus doing the NCRQ, has the safety profession divided itself too much by its even dogmatic beliefs to some degree that stops us ever actually hoping to get more of a cohesive, unified community?
Isn't it funny that potentially people might be doing that in a desperate attempt to find a community? Before press record, I was just saying that I was in London yesterday, and there was someone playing a proper trumpet, and Sherry said, "It sounds like your trumpet." And I was like, oh, cool, thanks.
Right, well, I'll tell you what, I appreciate Sherry 2024 been on BGT. Could we see James on BGT in 2025 for his trumpet? It could be.
Maybe, I reckon. I don't know if the Rebranding Safety audience know that, actually, and I wonder if Sherry would cut this out of the episode. Hopefully she doesn't. But for those that are listening / watching and don't know, but do watch Britain's Got Talent, the choir that were in Britain's Got Talent, Sherry was in said choir. And if you watch
the final,
and they went to the final. Unfortunately, Sherry didn't make it to the final because she's with child and has been very ill. So she couldn't. Everybody's fine, FYI, just in case anybody's worried. But she'd been really, really ill, so she couldn't make the final. But she was on the first audition where they were really heavily praised, and you can see her on live TV. So how cool is that? Amazing. Well done, Sherry.
So cool.
Well done. I was in the background doing trumpets. I wasn't. I really wasn't. Anyway,
how's
things?
You? Oh, mate, I asked first. Go for it. Go on. How's things? How are you doing?
I feel tired this week. I've had a week off. I haven't had a week off. I've had a business owner's week off. World's smallest violin. I was supposed to have a week off. It's been a good week, actually. I've got lots done, lots of stuff that's just been lingering around, lots of conversations with new customers. But it's always been, I've picked up the last few times we've had a general election in that things go quiet around the general elections. Everyone seems to not commit to anything, and you get no, like a lot of our customers are safety professionals, as you know, Pete, and like I've talked to them, and they're all a bit frustrated that everything kind of stops. Their budget stops, their resource stops, everything kind of stops, but then it doesn't stop. The world carries on working, but decisions stop in a sense.
Mm.
So I felt a bit of that, but this last week it seems to have been improving. There's more kind of conversations, and things look like they're kind of starting to get to a point of decisions and stuff like that, which is nice. So I think we've got closer and closer to the point where it's done. And now, obviously, today, as we record this, is Friday the 5th. So we now know the result is out and it's all done. So that's
Exactly,
good.
don't you?
The world can crack on now, and everything will change overnight. I'm sure that everybody was worried about, but yeah. So that was good. Yesterday, I had the day off, and me and Sherry did a bucket list. Bucket list. What would you call it? A bucket list event, I suppose. We went to see Les Miserables, which
Very nice.
as well as a geek, I do quite like my musicals as well. Um, and Les Mis has been on the list for a very long time, and we've just never got round to it because it ain't cheap. Um,
Yeah,
and like, if you're gonna go watch it, I'm kind of like, I want to watch good seats, but it was, yeah, just, oh, I mean, if you're not into musicals, you're not into musicals, but it's just phenomenal. What a
it
story!
is genuinely really good. I'd seen
Just,
it at Bradford, at the Bradford Theatre. Obviously, not nowhere,
oh,
not the same as London, but oh jeez, it's just phenomenal. Really,
it's
really
just
good. Do you know,
unbelievable.
I do have a question for you, and obviously,
Mhm.
like we start these type of podcasts by kind of the first question is what you've been up to this week, right? And I know that you kind of said, well, smallest violin. There'll be a lot of business owners listening to this, right? And a lot of people that run their own consultancies, sole traders. Hey, there might even be interims, right? Which kind of puts them as sort of their own kind of self-employed individual as part of this. How do you
Yeah.
deal with the guilt of taking time off when you like? How do you deal with the guilt?
Oh, how do you deal with it, guilt? Suppose you kind of just you don't. I don't know whether this is a right answer, or I don't think there is a right answer, but I don't think you deal with it. You just get used to it. Like I said, so we booked the whole week off. We actually only took one day off, and we only took that one day off because Sherry had jam packed an agenda booked of like like I say, bucket list, go to see Les Mis. We're in
Yeah,
London all day, so everything was a tight agenda plan. But like we're sitting there and we're still talking about the business. We're just less,
yeah,
I suppose, less formal. And we're doing it over a nice lunch or in a pub in London or whatever. Um, I, I think you're also balancing the guilt of like father and motherhood as well. Like
yeah,
for us to go to London, we have got to like pie our child off on. It was my mother this time, so had to like dump Maggie at my mum's house, and my mum had her overnight. So I don't think it goes. I think you just get used
yeah.
to it and you just carry on. I will. I don't know if this was a loaded question, Peter, but I will say that having a good team makes all the difference. So I think there is this thing.
Yeah.
I'd expect my 50 quid check in the post for this public compliment. Um, I think that going going away, having a day off, if you are sole trader, I can't.
Mm,
Back in we didn't have any days off in the first 2 years of the business because it was just us, and
yeah.
um, it is knowing that if something comes up, you or Carly will be able to jump on it and can jump on it.
Mm,
And then if it comes to me or Sherry on a day off, like it's bad and it probably deserves
yeah.
us to kind of down tools and kind of jump on it kind of thing. But ultimately, I think you two make a big difference. So having a good team of people around you that you trust and are confident in makes a
Mm.
massive difference. I don't think the guilt ever. I tell you what, I felt more guilty. I don't know if I mentioned this publicly, but I felt
No,
more
go for it. Go
guilty about the golf issue that we had last Friday.
it. It's not golf, James. It's professional networking that just so happens to be at a golf course because both of us know that you can't play golf for shit. So
actually
that's
played very well that day. I was actually very happy with how I played that day. But that is normally true. So, for context of those who don't know, we have a team meeting, and if there's anyone who's the most vocal in this business about how important these weekly team meetings are, is me. Like, I banged on about them for ages. Not that anyone's against them. I think everyone's for them. It's just we're all so
oh
busy,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, like, everyone's for them, but I'm like, these are so important. We have to do this. Blah 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 blah. Proper anal about it. And then we had one booked in, and I screwed my whole like. So I'd basically planned this beautiful day. It was honestly, when I say, Peter, this day was meticulously planned, which for me is a win. Is an understatement. I had planned gym in the morning, which I'd booked. I'd booked a class
Yep.
to go to the gym in the morning. Then I was like, before, so I get up. This is my normal routine ish. Is get up, walk the dog at 6. I get back and I'm in the gym for 7:15 class. And then I'm back home for about 8:30ish, and then I'm like run upstairs in the shower, coffee, toast, jump on the first call, whatever. And that was literally the plan for that day. So our call was going to be like 9:30, 10. So I was like, wicked, go walk dog, go to gym, come back, do this. Had another call. We had another meeting after that meeting, and then I was like, right, finish that. Golf gear in the boot, off I go, play golf, do this networking thing for the charity that we support as a business. So it's a really lovely day. We tee off at like 1:30, 2:00. Perfect. The night before, I'm in a little WhatsApp group. I'm planning on getting there at 7:15. I'm planning on getting there at 7:30. I'm planning on getting there just before 8. Lads, the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about, James? I'm like, we don't have to get there till like 1:00. Like, I know you're eager, but geez, James, we tee off at 8 a.m. What? I've got a meeting at 10 a.m. Like, they were like, you're joking, right? I was like, no, honestly, it was just. And so having to say to my team, I really want you to do this meeting. Please carry on doing it because there's loads of important stuff. And that week we'd had a particularly shit week and stuff like that. So I really wanted to be in this meeting. I felt more guilty about that, playing golf as like a stereotypical dickhead business manager. I'm not playing golf for the 2 moment. It felt horrible. It felt
No,
really
it's
horrible.
I can appreciate. I know that we've talked a lot about the values of risk fluent. Obviously, one of those is a rule for me and not for thee. That's sorry, rule for sorry, no, that's wrong. Was it rule for thee and not for me? You know, like we said, the early bird gets the worm, but the early MD gets on the golf course before dawn. That's very much there for it. But it's funny because it actually I think it ties quite nicely to what you were just saying before about kind of like the time off type of thing. You know, we talk a lot about resilience in businesses, in functions, in kind of health and safety processes. We talk about things that are very tightly coupled, and I know that resilience of leaders, of health and safety professionals gets thrown around quite a lot, but I often think people see resilience, I'm not going to say in the wrong way, but maybe not in the whole thing. So a lot of people that I speak to see resilience as being kind of like an elastic band stretching.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, resilience is not about the stretch. Resilience is about the stretch and the return back to normal.
Yep.
And at a point where you might feel guilty for kind of going out on holiday for a day, actually, you take time off where you can in other ways. You take kind of a mental breather in other ways
Mm-hmm.
because that, in theory, is the only way that you can do it.
Yep.
So, I appreciate your insight and I appreciate the rawness of how you're sharing it as well. Because I guarantee there's a lot of people that are listening to this that are feeling, hey, I want to start a consultancy. Hey, I want to go out on my own. Or hey, I'm a leader of a consultancy at the moment. But yeah, is the guilt? Is it just me? Is this an actual thing?
I also don't
So
think it's consulting. It's like every business owner I talk to. So a friend of mine runs a really, really successful. He worked. I wouldn't even call it. It's like to say it's a hire business would be unfair. Like, so he does equipment
yeah,
hire for like festivals and theatre and stuff like that. So like PAs, microphones and stuff like that. He does all of that. He's also a really, really top end like sound and lighting engineer. So he's toured around the world with Matilda and stuff like that. Like, he's top dog. I
yeah,
was texting him yesterday. I was on the way home from London, and I was just texting him. He's got all the exact same problems I've got. like all the
Yeah.
exact same stresses I've got. Like, oh, I've just built this freaking massive office, and then we've gone quiet, and 3 people have left the business, and I'm like, right. So he's like, now I've got an office for 8 people, and there's only fucking one of me in here. All these businesses are having the same problems. You know, he's got a
Yeah.
quiet time at the moment. I've got a quiet time at the moment. He's starting to be unsure whether the quiet time is getting better. Our quiet time is starting to disappear and starting to become a busy time. Like, they're all the same problems. They're just all at different times, and sometimes they're
Yeah.
all at the same time. Like I say, general elections and stuff never help. I think every business at the moment
Yeah.
has been like a bit unnervy. Sorry, my hearing aid's driving me insane. Um, but we all have the same problems, all of them.
Yeah.
Every single business
With it,
owner is the same.
without wanting to get like a platitude from you for a second, is there anything that you'd recommend for those people that are listening that are thinking, "Hey, I'm in the same boat"?
You're funny enough. Yes, there is actually, and it was my topic that I was going to bring up later. Find a community would be mine. Find
Community. I
a
like it.
like-minded community that you
All
can
right. Well,
vent to.
I'll tell you what. Let's should we put a pin in that one to come back to it a
Yeah,
lot later on? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Nice
So,
one.
what have you been up to?
Do you know, it's been a busy week. My MD decided to go off on holiday, but not really holiday, after dicking about a golf game for like 2 days at the end of last week. So I've had a lot of stuff to pick up, really.
I walked into that.
No,
I
no,
walked into that.
no. No,
Jesus,
no, it's been all
boss
right.
and
I
a
mean,
dick.
honestly, when I see that man, I can give peace of my mind. I'll tell you,
Me
right?
too.
But
Me
no, no,
too.
it's
Tell him I'm looking for him.
but it's been a good week. So obviously we've got a new consultant in the business, and I've spent a good amount of the week kind of going through just a bit of coaching on a few different bits and pieces in the world of consultancy. So political management, the differences between products and services, how we can kind of productize what we do, and ultimately, I'm going to say dive into the dirty world of adaptation. But I think what's always surprised me throughout my career in health and safety is that there's actually very little original content that's created by safety professionals. The more time I spend in safety, the more time I kind of realised that people are either reusing what they've taken from different jobs or something that they found off the internet. And I want to stress there's nothing wrong with that at all, but it can be quite surprising for a lot of people coming into the industry that actually feel like they have to create everything from scratch. You really
Hmm.
don't. You just need to have the curiosity to understand the requirements and the outcomes that are needed from the client, and then adapt the process or the product that you're kind of using or have found, so that it's
Yep.
more bespoke, that it fits the purpose. And a lot of that comes down to simple things like, how do I Google effectively? What's my critical thinking like for cross validating findings off websites because something's come from a non peer reviewed journal? And I tell you what, this legislation's a right pain in the arse, and I don't know really where to start with it. So actually Googling, adapting, verifying, validating, all of these different skills that come into play has been really good fun to work through. I mean, it's interesting when I get a new starter coming to any business, or kind of I'm working with a client that has a new safety team type of thing, and they say, "Oh, Pete, what should I learn?" Like, "Oh my god, do I need to go on XYZ courses?" I say, "Well, realistically, there's only one course you do need to go on to start with, and it's an Excel level 2 course because the whole world runs on Excel. Like, it literally runs on Excel. So just learn Excel." But legitimately, there's only 3 things that I feel any safety professional that's coming in really needs to do, and it's build rapport, understand business and functional context, and set clear expectations with stakeholders. Like all of the technical knowledge, all of that stuff, it comes in time. No one's a walking encyclopedia. I'm not a walking encyclopedia. I Google the hell out of stuff all the time. I literally do. So actually build rapport, understand context, set clear expectations. And that's been really, really nice to kind of work through, have a great set of coaching conversations, not only with our new starter, but also with a few of our clients that have got new safety team starters as well. It's been really nice. I've been doing a few site visits, making some bespoke tools, funnily enough, a couple from scratch, a couple from things that we've had before. So things like site coordination plans, CPPs, some for kind of like big multi-phase, multi-year projects. One of them I was working on, James, and I came across it, and it was about UXOs. And I was like, geez, I've never seen a UXO before. Do you know what UXO is?
UXO. I feel like I
Yeah.
should know what that means, but no.
Unexploded ordnance.
Ah, right. Yeah, yeah. Where did you
And
come
do you know,
across
it's
that?
funny.
Oh,
It's
right.
the
Okay.
one down on the Thames.
Right.
So it's literally like
Gosh.
kind of 3 kilometers away from a Luftwaffe
Mm,
target, and there was a when you look at the maps type of thing, it's like the nearest UXO that they'd found was on the north side of the river, but about a kilometre away from where we're working. So it's
yeah. Yeah.
again trying to kind of pick these bits out. I'm like, oh my god! And do you know what my first thought was because of the way that my brain works, right? I was like, what else is underground in London? Plague pits. Because
Mm.
actually, like, and it's like it sounds really
I
daft,
never
but like
even
it's one of
thought of that
those.
actually. But like,
But
can
it's
it
just
live that long? Like the
uh,
virus? Surely not underground.
basically what I'd say is if anyone has any concerns about construction work in London, definitely, if you haven't done it already, definitely check the plague pit registers that are on the online, just to double check, because there's actually a lot more than I certainly thought there was before I started. These are the joys of being a little
Okay, I'm
country
googling
bumpkin
it
from the
now.
north, mate. We don't really have a lot of plague pits that are like in big city centres around here. I mean, don't get me wrong, like the further north you go, the more kings you find on the car parks, but other than that, there's not too much that you kind of get through. So yeah, so that's been quite fun learning about. I'm going to say like just I say learning, but getting into the detail of things like UXOs, plague pits, and kind of big CPPs that are there for construction projects. But then also scaling that back to things like a CPP for a little event where someone's literally got 3 contractors on an all-day event that they're creating, and we need to then follow all the relevant bits from CDM for an event point of view as well. So it's been quite nice actually taking what's been really big and being able to scale it down and adapt it for a few different clients. I've enjoyed the creativity that comes with that to make it relevant. That's I live for that type of stuff. It's good fun. Yeah,
Totally
it's been quite
distracted by plague pits. I'm totally like I'm on a map
genuinely.
already. I'm fucking
Do you
mind
know?
blown that this is a thing. I didn't
Well,
even think about that.
it's going to sound really daft as well, but like even simple things. We've got a few clients down in the southwest, and we're working through the risk register. And like, oh, we've not got radiation risk. And I said, are you sure? So we don't
Mm.
do what we got with radiation, Pete. I said, it's radon. And
Yeah,
I'm not trying
yeah.
to say that in like a way that like, oh, you guys should have known about it type of stuff. But it's again, it's surprising what's under our feet. It really is, really, really is. And I think if it's
Jesus,
anything that this
these
last
plague
week has,
pits.
has taught me, genuinely, when you get into the whole plague pit stuff, mate,
So
it's
what's
very
the
interesting.
is there genuinely a risk to it if you dug it up?
That's probably a good one to go through at another time. I'm going to say it's debatable, but I don't think anyone in any respect would want to take the risk of relaunching the plague if they were to come across
Oh
a
yeah,
previously
definitely
undocumented
not.
plague pit.
Are plague pits still dangerous? Is the first. Once the body has died and been buried, plague on the body doesn't last very long, so it doesn't survive well in the ground. It's not a live bacteria, so it doesn't have the potential of spreading infections. In the modern world, the DNA that was identified on teeth samples wasn't live bacteria. This was after
Hmm.
one was unearthed in Essex.
Yeah,
So this was just in the news. So it's obviously not. I don't know. We can't.
the
Not, oh my
big.
god! It's
I'm not going to
fucking
say
mad.
like. Oh, I know. The pictures can be quite intense. It's definitely not one for Google safe search. It's quite intense. Yeah, it's really quite intense. I think the biggest issue that I find, and why perhaps I'm a little bit like cagey about the relative risk of things, is that a lot of the time we deal with businesses from a reputational risk point of view and kind of holistic risk management piece. And to be honest with you, when you're only one TikTok away from a viral story, the last thing you
Mm.
want is to be breaking ground and breaking ground into a pile of bodies. That is oh geez, yeah, it is. It can be a challenge. It can be a
Mm.
challenge. Not a very not it's not a common challenge that we come across, but it can be a challenge. And the
Mm.
perception of risk is very different than the actual health and safety risk at times as well. So yeah, it's been
Wow.
an interesting week, James. Interesting week.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not expect you to go there, but that I'm here for that. I'm here for
Yeah.
that. Sounds cool as shit. I'm well here for that. That plague pit in Essex was from building the Elizabeth line, so
I was
you know
actually.
it's not
There you
like
go.
It's not like, well, apparently it was a part of the Elizabeth line construction. I was skim reading it, so I didn't know the
Yeah,
Elizabeth line went to. Would it go to? Yeah. So yeah, of course it goes across. Anyway, um,
yeah.
so yeah, it's not unheard of.
No,
Wow,
interesting
wow.
stuff. Like I know. So it's
I
been quite a week.
really,
Yeah, been quite a week.
pun intended. I really want to get down that rabbit hole, but I just don't know enough about it to go down it. But I would really
Oh,
like to.
don't worry, James. We'll be going down it soon enough. I promise you that.
Oh, great. Yeah. Oh, God. I regret saying that now. I meant on the podcast, not in a serious, actual, like,
Okay,
work-related
all right, okay,
conversation.
yeah, gotcha. Oh, yeah, in that case, we'll cover it that topic whenever we want. We really will. So maybe moving swiftly on, James, into what we've been up to this week. So I appreciate you've been on holiday and nursing your golf injuries, and have been too tired following a day out with your wife yesterday. It's just very different,
No.
very challenging. That, but legitimately, I appreciate it's been a bit of a challenging couple of weeks with working through a lot of different bits. So what have you been thinking about this week? What's been on your mind?
I have been thinking about, across different contexts, about society and community in
Yeah.
and its relationship with work and relationship with safety. So I'll explain
Okay.
that. So this touches on a couple of things. So a couple of weeks ago, I think we mentioned on the podcast around the British economy, productivity, Labour's manifesto of
Mhm.
increased workers' rights, and then we start talking about French politics and their productivity is up. And that they have increased workers' rights, but what we don't have probably in our society slash community is this like get on the streets and protest kind of
Yeah.
collectivism that they potentially have in France that we don't have, or that we used to have but probably lack a little bit now. And combined with this like thing that I heard on a podcast where this Tory MP said, and I'm going to get to a point at some point, I promise. This Tory MP said that everyone in Britain, when they get to the polling booth, are on their own, and they will vote for individuality in a sense. So they'll vote for what benefits them when no one's looking over their shoulder, and that's why
Mm.
Tories will always win. And I was like, what a horrible way to win, but also like I'm like, what a shame that is kind of this lack of like collective, I don't know, consideration maybe was, and this was just pondering in my head. I just so happened to be going to watch Les Mis, which is literally about like French
Yeah.
Revolution, and like, and it's I don't know if anyone's watched it, but like if you haven't watched the
Yeah.
film, watch the film. But like it's the most emotional thing you've ever watched, and
Yeah.
it's so much in it, the story of love and story of sacrifice for others, and the story of all of these different personalities coming together and how they interact. And it's a fucking beautifully powerful story. It's unbelievable. I cried numerous times throughout this show. Um, and it was this same thing around society and this, and it just kept going around in my head. And then Sherry booked this out of nowhere show that she was like, that she'd seen with a friend, and was like, you need to watch this, James, this is right up your street, called The
Mm.
Choir of Man. Now if anyone is going to London, they want to have a really good time, go and watch this show, The Choir of Man. It's great. If you like to be involved, like audience participation, sit in the, what's it called, on the circle? No, on the ground. No, the stalls on the ground
Oh,
floor,
the
isn't it? On
stalls.
the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sit in the stalls because you will get involved. If you don't like to get involved, sit in the circle. Don't sit in the stalls. On the stage is a working bar, so you
Yeah.
can walk up onto the stage and get a pint, obviously not mid show, but you walk up onto the stage, and just about 10 minutes, 20 minutes before the show starts, the actors come out and they just walk around setting up the stage whilst you're there sitting there having a pint, and they're talking to you, and it's just surreal. But you're actually on the stage getting a pint, which one is cool as shit. Like, what an idea. It was so good, because the whole notion of this show is around a pub and the community, and it's deep rooted with this message of particularly men's mental health, but it's talking about mental health per se as a collective and the power of the community that a pub builds. And I'm not sure people are meant to cry when they're watching Choir of Man, because it's a very fun show, but I found it quite powerful. Having friends in the last like 3 or 4 years that have gone through some significant challenges mentally, and thinking back to, couldn't help but think back to like other times that like we used to just go to the pub and chew fat, and actually how powerful that was to our own mental health. And then it made me think about way back on Rebranding Safety, where we had Jason Anker on the podcast. And he said to me something which I thought of now, and this was years ago. He was like, we've lost the community that we used to have. And he was like, and I think that is a big issue with workplace mental health and overall societal mental health. He was like, because you used to have like working men's club and conservative clubs and labour clubs and all of this stuff. And it was this thing that you would go to work and you would come back and you would go to the pub and you would connect and you would build relationships, you would vent. And that's kind of what this show is about. They're not talking about clubs, they're talking about pubs, but like it's the same thing. It's this whole show of like this community of people that just come together and share problems and all of this stuff. And all of this stuff is all happening within a week, right? And it's weird. And whilst all this is happening, the safety exchange that David Proven and the team built had announced that they were closing that down,
Right. Yeah.
and that it hadn't worked essentially. So it's a community, a safety community, a digital one, yes, but still a community that has kind of, I don't want to say failed. I think that would be unfair, but like, not quite worked. And it made me think about Project Millennium and the Health and Safety Network. Also, I don't think that quite worked. So we kind of are living, or I've been thinking that I don't know if we are, but I've been thinking that we're living in a world that has a distinct lack of community. And I think that the immediate thing that we could talk about is mental health. But I also actually think it could make better workplaces even for physical safety. Because if we think back to the example I was given about Les Mis, if we cared enough about our fellow worker, would it ipso facto make a better workplace, ipso facto make a safer workplace? So I've been thinking a lot. That's a really long conversation, like long description of what I've been thinking about, but I'm just trying to give it some context of all these little things that all just kept coming back to the same golden thread of like this like individualist society we've probably created ourselves, or I feel like we've lost community where we don't look out for one another in a sense. Like if I think about my friends, for example, I've got like a small group of I don't have a massive group of friends. I've got a relatively small and close group of close friends. Like, don't see each other anymore at all. Like, it's this world of individuals, is what it feels like. And that might just be my world. I don't know. But I was sitting there watching a show that was literally made about we don't go to the pub anymore and we don't have community anymore and we should go to the pub. And then at the end of it, it was like, donate to this mental health charity. And I was just like, I don't think this is the main problem. I think I think we're all struggling with a lack of community and a lack of collectiveness in a way. So yeah, that's been my mind for the last, I'd say week, maybe 2 weeks.
Thank you for sharing, James, because there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. We're not going to get through that in the next 30 minutes. That's for sure.
But it's a good thought, and genuinely, do you know, I think there's a lot of people that will be listening to this that will have picked out a few points that you've raised that might well resonate with them, from those that, for example, might be at let's say the early stage of their career. They've gone through maybe university, they've had a really close kind of tight-knit group at university type of things, and then they've literally spread out all across the UK, all across the world type of thing. They've all gone into type of different jobs. We've seen from kind of like through COVID, they moved to like a digital type of team space. And then don't get me wrong, there's sort of like coming back to the office type of thing, but actually those that have come back to the office, from the ones that I've spoken to, they say it's a very different environment. And it feels like it's a different environment because the commonality and the camaraderie isn't necessarily there in the same way. It's a different type. It doesn't feel as collegiate. It doesn't feel as interlinked. It almost feels like there's an element of bittersweetness because they've been able to have kind of this different lifestyle at home that's fit more into their values. And now coming back into the office, it's like trying to wear a different set of shoes than the ones you've been wearing for like the last couple of years, type of thing. You're still wearing shoes, it just doesn't feel as nice. It's not molded to your foot as nice.
Yeah.
So,
It's also, I think,
and it,
like what used to define us was where we're from. That was always our collective
well,
thing, wasn't it? Like,
right.
because
So,
you didn't have the internet kind of thing. Maybe, I
so
don't know.
I'll jump on that for a second, and this is like a real international perspective for a second. If you do you know many Americans, like any like people from the United States?
Yeah, a few.
Nearly every kind of American that I've spent a decent amount of time with invariably comes around to the question of heritage and where have you come from and like
Mm,
where have your parents come from type of thing. So they
mm,
might say, oh, like you from I'm not going to do an American accent, but you're from the UK. Are you like half Scottish, half English type of thing? And they might say, no, I'm like half Polish, or I might say like I'm half German and a quarter Scottish, a quarter English, whatever it's going to be type thing. Say, oh well,
yeah,
I'm like a fifth generation Irish descendant, and
yeah,
you're kind of just like, wow, okay, you really know your stuff like behind this
yeah,
type of thing, and heritage and sort of like location becomes so intertwined to their identity
yeah,
that it's quite jarring actually to kind of think,
yeah.
okay, from the UK's point of view, we don't have such a deep seated same appreciation of heritage type thing. It
No.
just doesn't exist. We don't have the same level of conversations.
Mm.
If we scale
Or
that
like,
kind of,
yeah, go on, carry on.
I was going to say, if we kind of scale it down to sort of the minutest level for a second, we kind of see safety as technically safety is a lot smaller than people make it out to be. There are no 6 degrees of separation behind it, but it does feel still quite tribal from a sector by sector type of thing. Consultants know a lot of consultants, people in food know a lot of people in food, people in FMCG or retail know a lot of people in FMCG and retail type of thing. It's just everything is quite isolated in that respect, but it's not isolated from a sense of community or a sense of camaraderie. It's just a sense of comparison, really.
Mm,
And it's almost like actually people that have come into safety, I don't know, with the greatest respects, this is a huge tarring brush here. I don't know if they place a huge amount of value on the fact that it's health and safety that brings us together to say that we're in it. Like, how many people have you spoken to when you've asked, oh, how did you get into safety? And they kind of said, oh, I just kind of fell into it.
yeah, nearly all of them.
A part of me has wondered for a long time, is the relative feeling of a lack of community in health and safety because a lot of people never made the active choice to come into safety? They kind of fell into it, found that they were good at it, or that they enjoyed it to some degree and they've stuck with it.
I
But
think it's
actually,
because most are not. Go on. Sorry.
go on, go on.
I, I think it's because most are not proud to be in it. I think we might say in a community of safety professionals, we're proud to be in it. But can you sit in the
Mm,
local pub, we're surrounded by traders, and say you're proud to be in it? Because that's when you're challenged. Like when you're surrounded by people that think what you do is a massive pain in their ass and it's stupid and it's over the top and it just stops me doing whatever I need to do, because people that don't think that that brand doesn't still exist are naive,
yeah,
if I'm honest. But like, because
yeah,
it well and truly does. I literally am surrounded by small businesses and trade-based businesses, construction-based, every single day, and it exists. Literally didn't get a word in edgeways surrounded by the banter that I received at that golf do on Friday with the amount of
yeah.
shit that I get. And
Goes,
it's
did you
funny.
risk assessment for that golf swing? Hope
Yeah,
for, oh,
exactly.
quick, mind your head, James, get the hard hat on, it's fine.
Just all the time. It's 24/7.
Yeah,
Like, and part of me does think like maybe it's not like we're not proud to. Maybe it's like we're not allowed to be proud. I don't know, but it is. It's hard to do that when
Mm,
society doesn't, as an overall, I think, doesn't really understand what we do at all, and or
yeah,
provide kind of a sense of value to it. I'm not sure.
yeah. So,
I don't know.
you mentioned before about Safety Exchange had closed down. We know that kind of PM had closed down, Project My Team had closed down. From that point of view, these are kind of two isolated examples of grassroots, established and driven safety communities that haven't kind of progressed in sort of
Yep.
like a prolonged period of time type of thing. What do you think the barrier is that's kind of not allowing the safety community to flourish in the way that you might kind of see a different profession kind of coming together? Do you have an example of actually a profession that you kind of look at and think that is a tight knit community of professionals?
Ooh, that's a good example. That's a good question. I do think the trade community is a tight knit community.
Yeah,
Like they give each other shit, like, oh, the Sparkies live this beautiful life, just rolling in cash, driving around in the Mercedes and shit. Which I love all of that stuff. I think it's hilarious. Like, and the amount of shit that we get for what we do in it, but like they do
yeah,
very much like so all of my close mates, like five or six of my mates that are all close of mine, they're all in construction based or
mm,
relatively kind of like traditional kind of construction engineering type roles within our business, or it's their business, and
yeah,
they just all can relate to each other and they can all have a conversation about, or they're a really tight knit community. And if you look at like what On the Tools have done, they've gone from this
mm,
Facebook page that was just like, I don't know, but as far as I was aware, it's just a place to share stupid videos of shit that happens on construction sites, to now being this
yeah.
huge business, all built on this like shared collective frustration slash banter slash whatever in construction. I do genuinely think the trade sector is a really tight knit community.
So I've got a question. Again, this is a bit of a loaded question, right? But do you think that safety is too tribal to have the same level of cohesive community? Like, for example, there's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no plumber that's going around saying, I'm doing plumbing differently because I don't agree with plumbing one. And I've tried plumbing too, but fuck it, I want to do plumbing differently. Or like, it, it's just
New
plumbing is
view
plumbing.
plumbing.
New view plumbing, right? And hey, there might be new view plumbing, right? And I don't know. I literally don't know. But do you think that with HOP, with behavioural safety, with safety one, with safety two, with doing even something as simple as, oh, I came from doing NEBOSH versus doing the NCRQ, which might be perceived the same as doing A levels versus doing BTECs type of thing, the deep seated
Mm,
bias that might come with people feeling that there's a difference between, well, hang on a sec, you're chartered, but you're not cert, but you're tech, but you're affiliate, you're not even one of those. What the hell? Like,
mm,
has the safety profession divided itself too much by its, in some ways, maybe even dogmatic beliefs to some degree, that
mm,
stops us ever actually hoping to get more of a cohesive, unified community?
mm. It is this. Yeah, I mean, but isn't it funny that potentially that might people might be doing that in a desperate attempt to find a community,
Could be.
so that like I'm going to
Yeah.
become chartered to find a community of like-minded people that are also chartered, and they get there and they
Mm,
may or may not find it. I'm
yeah.
going to announce myself as a new view safety professional, because I want to find a community of like-minded people that think that way. Like, but what I think is interesting, right, is that what we used to have was like a, I say used to have, what was it, if I was to think about this comparison that I originally made of like the time when we had working men's clubs, right? I'm just
Yes.
using that appraisers, that's what they used to be called, right? So like you had that working men's club. It was a very geographical based community. Whereas
Mm.
now it's a very it's a very like values based community sense. Maybe like
Yeah.
you connect with people over the internet about what you like or what you love or what you do or what you know enjoy, whatever it is, right? And I think there's a beauty to that. I think that's a really good thing to have. I'm not saying it's one or the other, but what I
Mm.
think we have now lacked is when it was geographical based community, it was a community of differing opinions, values, beliefs, and so on. But it didn't matter because the founding community was geographical, so we would
Yeah.
have cognitive diversity to a certain extent. Like I don't think it
Yeah.
was like this amazing utopia, and I'm not saying that, but it was like I think that you would get this sense of like, and that's kind of what they were saying in this Choir of Man show, is that it doesn't matter what you are, who you love, where you're from, or any of this stuff. We all come to the pub and we just share with each other, and we just
Mm.
engage, and we look after each other because we're identified by this pub that we've built this community. And I was like, it made me want to
Yeah.
buy a fucking pub and just be like, I want to build this in a pub. Like it
Yeah.
was beautiful. I remember wanting to join the local Old Grammarians Club, which is literally like 5 minutes down the road. It was beautiful, but it was like we didn't have this. Now we've got these communities where we all kind of agree with each other, which I think is a good thing,
Mm.
but there's a trade-off to that in a sense.
Yeah. No,
And
I
then
agree. Oh, excuse me.
yeah, anyway, yeah, there's something else there around there's something else around like your when it's geographical. It's like, you know, when you think back in the day, it'd be like, so like I'm in Northamptonshire, and in Northamptonshire there's this like pretty famous little town called Corby, because
Yeah.
you will have this weird Northampton accent like what I've kind of got, which sounds a little bit Cockney and a little bit farmery, and it's really weird. And it kind of works like that gradually. It gets more and more northern as you go up, but then all of a sudden,
Mm.
as you're halfway through or towards the tail end of Northamptonshire, everyone starts sounding Scottish all of a sudden. And
Yeah.
that's Corby, right? And I love it. But I was raised to hate it because I lived in the next town called Kettering and we hate each other. So that's just how things
Yeah.
are, right? But Corby's this fascinating town in that it was a steel town. So Stewart and Lloyd's basically owned the entire town. Everyone that lived in Corby worked at Stewart and Lloyd's. A football club, Stewart and Lloyd's football. Rugby club, Stewart and Lloyd's rugby club. It was everything was Stewart and Lloyd's. There was this kind of community built around work, which I thought was really
Mm.
interesting. So yes, it was geographical, but it was around work. And there's something about like knowing that the person next to you is who you're working with tomorrow. And I
Yeah.
do wonder if that made things, or maybe not made it safer, but had the potential to make it safer, because the community was literally right here. Like we build a
Yeah.
relationship with that person collectively. Whereas when we're trying to create communities that are broader, and I think that's really cool and really awesome thing to have, the trade-off is that it's like we're less of a community with Steve or Bob or Sheila or Charlie who's on the shop floor in a sense. Like everything's
Mm.
kind of too big now in a
Yeah.
sense. I don't know.
Do, no, no. Do you know? It's funny. I was literally thinking the exact same thing while you were saying there. That even, and this is not to knock kind of like regional branch type groups that exist within sort of safety bodies type of things, but a part of me wonders if they're almost too big to be delivering truly on or reaching the potential that they could do, because it's trying to please
Mm,
too many people across too big of a geographical area. It's like, for
yeah.
example, if I think about Leeds, like Leeds is a massive metropolitan area. Actually, why isn't there a safety in Leeds group, or like I think I've seen one that I think Marissa Firkins is a part of that's down in Birmingham. I want to say, like I could have sworn I've seen a post a couple of bits on it in the
Yeah.
past, where it's like a tight geographical area, similar to BNI, but just literally for safety professionals in that metropolitan area. So actually,
Yeah.
I think you might be onto something there. That actually, from safety, maybe safety's point of view is that we always try and go too big. maybe we always try and go, I'm not going to say too tribal type of thing. We go like, you safety one, you safety two, are you hop, are you not? Are you progressive about this? Are you not about that? Actually, we're kind of looking at the wrong denominator here.
Yeah.
Realistically, should we just be looking at grassroots level dynamic local geographical groups instead that bring
Mm,
just safety professionals together, and we go out to the pub or we go out and try and attempt to play golf one day and just talk through type of things afterward, or if we're all in Leeds, say for example, like, oh, could I reach out, I don't know, we've got Jet 2 at Leeds Bradford Airport. Hey, do you reckon you could just give us a tour in Leeds? We might have like the Tetley, for example, that's just been bought out by Kirkstall Brewery, and say, hey, you are literally creating a brand new brewery in here. How would you feel about a team of safety professionals coming in, just have a look at what you're doing in the build stage? It'd be great to sort of get involved with something locally. We'd learn something. You guys would get the benefit of having a group of people type of stuff come in.
mm,
You could even, if you wanted to, if it's led by a single consultant, for example, you could say, look, it's like a no charge thing from what we're doing. We're just literally all here to learn and talk through challenges. If there is any advice, it goes through one person that has indemnity insurance right behind it. So if there
mm,
is anything that comes up, it's been vetted and it goes through. And then if anything happens, you're fine.
yeah.
But we get kind of a collective shared experience where everybody wins. It's geographically supported to each other. I don't know,
Mm,
mate. I feel like there's actually something there. It's not bringing back the pub to the point of the choir of man, but it's bringing something local. It's bringing something tangible, something meaningful, and something that actually, no matter what happens, like, we're here because we're all in Leeds, and
mm.
that's the beauty of it. At the end of the day, we're no more than half an hour away from each other.
Yeah.
If
I do think there is a little bit more of it up north than there is
yeah,
like south. I don't know. Like, there's pockets of it, isn't there, around the? So I'd say like in London, there's pockets of it within London. Like people are really quite proud
mm,
and strong community kind of based living in the pockets of London. I feel like up
yeah,
north there's a lot more of it as well, which is, I think a lot
mm,
of that is a kind of typical roots of like northern community. I think it's really strong, as it always has been.
yeah,
I feel like some areas like Birmingham, for example, I don't really know Birmingham that well, but I always get a vibe that Birmingham centre has like this real strong sense of community. Um,
mm.
but okay, I'm conscious of time because we haven't even asked you what you've been thinking about. We're going to have to pie that off, Pete. I think
To be
otherwise
honest
we're
with
going to
you,
smash.
genuinely, it's the same thing. But just very quickly, it was about how can we be more effective about sharing our honest mistakes as health and safety professionals. And
Mm,
it's kind of funny in some ways because in a roundabout way,
it's
having
very
a
similar.
platform to do it in a non-judgmental place where you can just talk with your peers, it
Yeah,
actually comes out on there as well. So
yeah,
dare I say that we talk, we want to, we've been thinking about the same things just from different
yeah.
angles.
Yeah, and ultimately, what's interesting is something that I think we touched on this when we in a Project Millennium conversation way back in the day. But like, is it harder to talk? Is it harder to be honest about failures and different ways of doing things in safety because we feel like people's lives slash physical health slash actual health or whatever, mental health and so on, all of that stuff is too much to gamble with. So it's really hard to say we've screwed up, or it's really hard to say let's try this new thing. And
Yeah,
one of the other things that I don't want to put in there, that maybe we roll this conversation onto the next one, but also like this week it came out that the fatality rates have gone up again.
yeah.
So as a nation, we're not doing great at physical safety. And then Dom Cooper made a really interesting comment, which I'm inclined to agree, but I think that there's a middle ground. So he's basically saying that, well, it's gone up because we're too distracted by safety's too distracted by what's sexy now, e.g., mental health, and that's what we're spending our time talking about.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think there is part of that. I genuinely do think there is part of that. And he was like, but when, and his stance has always been the same, and he said it on Rebranding Safety as well, in that we're not competent, we're not psychologists, we shouldn't be guiding people on that. And I'm not sure we are. I think what we're trying to do is basically just create a more structured system of management, managing people, managing behaviors, managing risks, and so on. That's really all safety is trying to do, I think. And the HSE management standards is a really good example of that. All we're trying to do is create better management within the workplace. So I do think there is a place for us to sit and play in there, but ultimately it's kind of like this conversation for me was all connected as well, of like, would would we be able to deal with both of these if we just had a better connection with our communities, whether they are
Mm.
work or geographical or what? Like, could we genuinely solve both? We know that community is good for mental health. We know that strong relationships are good for mental
Yeah.
health. We know that relationships within the workplace is good for mental health and stress reduction. So we also have seen that people do care for each other better if they have more connection.
Yeah.
I believe so. There's a lot here to talk about. I'm not sure what it looks like, but I definitely think there's something
Ge-
here.
No, I can believe it. I genuinely can. And this is going to sound such a tangent for a second, but have you ever heard of the dead internet theory?
The dead internet theory.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
In a very brief kind of way, all of like the little individual hosted websites that had quirky and interesting information on have slowly died over the years. And
Right.
what we find is that things like special interest forums have reduced in kind of activity for the sake of moving over to sort of like bigger platforms. But the actual engagement and processes of talking about things becomes more difficult to access because you can't search for things better. You can't re-engage in like previous topics about particular things that you might have been interested in. And actually it fragments the community that it's tried to bring together in this sort of big platform. So, for example, like Facebook is a great example of this. It's technically brought billions of people onto the platform. You get individual groups. There are health and safety groups, for example, that are on there. But actually, it's very difficult to search through the posts to go through actually what was this particular topic about. How can I sit? Let's say I want
Oh,
to look
right.
at like Kosh on that
Yeah.
particular forum or in that group. You can't really do that very easily because it's all just individual posts type of things. It's really
Yeah.
tough. So actually, like if I look at some things on the internet that I've searched for, the Irish forum comes up every now and again. And actually, there
Okay.
was a point where that was quite a cool digital platform for people to talk about
Yeah.
things and discuss things, but it is
Not so
just
long
dead.
ago either. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So actually, could to a degree, I can totally hear the idea about getting distracted by what's sexy because we get distracted by what's big. We get
Yeah.
distracted by the Facebooks, we get distracted by the big bodies type of stuff because
Yeah.
why wouldn't you? They're big, they're loud, they're bright, they demand a certain approach to type of things, but are they really what's best for you as an individual? Probably not. But you don't have an
Mm,
alternative because there is no alternative because the alternatives have died. The little
mm.
community groups have perished that could have been that before.
Yep.
So,
And how much value and like with slightly, I'm slightly creating a digress here, which we won't go down because we don't have time. But like, how much stuff is missed because it's outshone by the big brands and the big names? Like, how many people are doing some really cool shit and some really amazing work, but because they work for like Smith's Engineering in the small town in Northamptonshire, will never be a keynote speaker in London in December?
yeah, it's a
It's
great
just,
point.
and that's the trade-off as well. Like if our so this is where this gets really interesting. If our communities are too geographically restrictive, ouch, geographically restricted, then we don't break out to share the learnings beyond that geographical
Mm,
limit, so to speak. So I want to be very clear. What I'm not saying is, oh, the world used to be better back in the day. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we've gone too extreme one way, which I think extremes are necessary for change. So we have to try an
yeah,
extreme first, and then we find the middle ground, right? I don't want us to lose this sense of community, this geographical community, this close community, by knowing who Bob is and knowing who Sheila is, that we used to have, what I feel like we used to have back in the day anyway.
yeah. I agree. You have inspired a good idea in me from that. I think there's something that we can do, but I'm going to have to tell
Right.
you about it a little later on.
Okay.
But
I'm nervous.
you've
We got enough to
inspired
do.
something, mate. No, no, genuinely, because I think perhaps one takeaway from this for me throughout my career is that community has defined my position that I'm in now. I would not be doing what I'm doing today. I would not be where I am today if it weren't for community within health and safety. So genuinely, I'm a massive proponent of it. I think we should have more of it. And actually, yeah, maybe there is something. Actually, yeah, sorry, yeah, there's got to be something that we got to do. It's
I think
almost,
there is.
yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, people listening to this, what do you think? Do we need more community? Do you feel
Mm,
like you are lacking in community? Do you feel quite isolated that you aren't necessarily represented by the communities you are a part of, type of thing? Would love to know.
I would.
Would
I'd
legitimately love
phrase
to
it.
know.
I'd phrase it slightly differently. Actually, a question for the
Yeah, go for it.
listeners: why do communities keep seeming not to work within safety? So we have
Actually,
IOSH,
that
we
would,
have
yeah,
double RSM. We have IOSH and double RSM. People, they're the most they're the most successful communities within our profession, and for
yeah,
IOSH by a country mile. But there's a lot of chatter around how people are not happy with IOSH, and same for double RSM. I think my experience is we started Project Millennium, which was then rebranding to Health and Safety Network, which didn't also seem quite land, but what we had in it felt phenomenal. I think the people that were in it would all agree it was an amazing period. And we didn't yes, it was a not it was a profit business, but we never made any profit and we fucking lost money on it. But like, not I'm not it was phenomenal what we had in it. We've had David Proman's community kind of not work either. Like, why is it not landing? What are people not getting from communities that are currently in safety? Tell us why it's not working. I'm not saying I'll fix
yeah.
it, but I'd be very interested to know. We've got not very long, and we didn't do one last week because you had to go and selfishly catch a train to go see
I
your
did.
beautiful family. So out of order of you. I'm going to randomly pick a question.
Ooh, go for it.
This one. This is interesting. Okay. From Mohammed Umar. Hopefully, I got your name right. Apologies if I haven't. Thank you, Mohammed, for your question. Here is the question, Peter. Are you ready?
I am always ready.
How can big organizations assist the companies who don't have proper safety management systems, particularly in countries like Africa and Asia, or African and Asian countries, he said. So essentially, talking about how can these big businesses that have the
Hmm.
resources help those areas slash businesses slash countries slash communities, whatever, that don't have those resources.
Hmm.
How can they help? This is fascinating. This is a whole
Definitely.
conversation in its own right. Interesting
Yeah.
that we've landed on something that's
Oh, we should
kind
have given
of,
more. Yeah, we should have given more time
yeah.
for this now because it's. Do you know? I think I'm going to try and give it a quick answer right behind stuff.
Hmm.
So this is a bit fast and dirty. The first things first. Um, we can't help others necessarily to our fullest ability unless our cup is full ourselves. And actually, we need a bit of introspection as a large organisation to actually fairly and objectively benchmark how good are we? Are we drinking the Kool Aid, or actually are we as actually good as we think we are behind this?
Yes.
And
Yeah, yeah.
what lens are we measuring good from? So I think
Mm,
that's kind of the first bit. Are we measuring good in the sense that we don't have any accidents? Or are
yep.
we measuring good in the sense that actually we invest in our employees and they leave our organization healthier and happier than they were when they started as part of it? And
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
that
Yeah.
last part has a profound impact for kind of those smaller businesses and communities that are, for example, maybe in less resource parts of the world, the work becomes, unfortunately, it's something that can kill you, but it is also something that can absolutely categorically improve your quality of life and the outcomes of everyone in your family as a result of that, because it
Mm,
allows you to fulfill so much more of Maslow's hierarchy of needs at the base level than you would have otherwise have had access to. So
yep.
I think you've got kind of one key thing to start with: introspection. Review yourself. Are we as good as we say we are? I think the next step, and it depends entirely on the scope of your business, but define the parameters of your support. So, for example, if we look at, let's take kind of emissions, generally speaking, from an environment point of view, you look at scope one, scope two, scope three. Actually, can you apply a scope one, scope two, scope three to health and safety through your supply chain
Yeah,
instead?
I
And
like that.
actually say, okay, we know that we've got a handle here on scope one. We're now going to focus on scope two, but we know that that's the limit of our parameters behind it because that's reasonably all we can resource from a health and safety point of view right now. So you might choose to do it that way, or you might actually say, right, let's map out our supply chain system literally from raw materials through to the consumer relative to what it is that we're producing and say, okay, are we going to focus on one part ahead of us and one part behind us, depending on where we are, or are we going to go all the way back to the primary producers? Because actually, the primary producers have the biggest point of exploitation, the biggest part of risk, especially if you're doing like food manufacturing. The level of injuries and ill health that can arise from agriculture in the countries that were mentioned can be huge. That there's massive issues. I watched even something as simple as chocolate, right? Chocolate making. If you have a look at the amount of exploitation that goes on in cocoa farming across the world, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
So again, actually thinking, okay, we have the capacity to help where it's most needed. It might be most needed at the primary producer stage in agriculture, but then you think to yourself, okay, we're actually we're not dealing with people getting injured here, James. We're dealing with child trafficking. We're dealing with major organized crime. We're dealing with risks that, quite frankly, are way out of our pay grade as safety professionals to be able to support with, or actually from a morality point of view, they're not something that we can deal with ourselves because we're trying to deal with institutional political corruption. Just,
yeah,
there's so you've got introspection to start with to look at your own business. You've then got setting the parameters as to where you think you can help in that respect. And then it's really, for me, I think it's a case of actually going out and speaking to the people within the parameters that are at the front line, but the people that are then doing the job itself. We often say that you can't have effective technical safety outcomes if you aren't looking at transformational elements as well. So you can't just look at how do we improve a risk assessment if, for example, the culture of that organization literally works people to death. Like a risk assessment isn't going to make a squat's worth of difference if the person that's doing that job is having to work 96 hours in a week. Like
mm,
it's just never going to fly. So
mm,
again, I think that there's that kind of understanding here about you've got the parameters of the supply chain and the focus area, but then realistically, you need to think, okay, what am I going to look at here? Is it isolation? Is it in isolation, or is it cohesive? Is it holistic as part of that? Honestly, my recommendation: don't go cohesive. I know that sounds a bit counterintuitive for a second, but you'd be taking on way too much. A business would take on way too much unless they are like a multi-billion-pound full resource it with a massive team type of thing, get the relevant stakeholder backings from regulators, political kind of individuals, policing, enforcement. You're gonna have a tough time if there's some of those significant issues. But actually, the last thing that I'd say on that is once you've worked out cohesive versus isolation, and you've picked out the area that you want to look at, don't look at safety for the answer. And I know that sounds really stupid, but like if I think about one of the most innovative things that I saw years and years ago now, and it was about how to provide lighting to exceptionally low skilled workers in Africa in their homes. And rather than presenting them with like electricity from a light's point of view, this guy literally made like a chemical solution, put it in a plastic bottle, and then attached it to the roof, and it had like a luminescent
oh, I saw that.
kind of yeah.
And you
This
put
this
like
was
and put it in the drilled a hole in the
yeah
like aluminium kind of roof or whatever
yes
it was.
yeah
Yeah, and it was like a freaking it's like an LED light.
yeah
It was
it
mad.
was yeah, and it literally it just dramatically improved lighting as part of that.
Yeah.
There's a great example that I've seen before now, and it was from a guy called Paul Verico that works at Eversheds. It's a legal firm in Leeds. And he talked through an example of what had a more profound impact and benefit on children's educational rates in a third world country in a specific example. Was it giving them books that were in English when they were for ages between 3 to 6, or was it working through a full deworming regime? And actually, it was the medical deworming regime that had a much more profound and positive impact on educational outcomes than just giving them English speaking books. So, when we think about education, we think books. Actually, for the type of countries that might have been mentioned, dependent on your parameters that you're working at, books might not be the answer. Deworming might be the answer.
Maslow's
That's
hierarchy of need.
exactly. So don't think about safety in some respects, but conversely to that, when you're thinking about the problems that you're solving, if you close your eyes and you hear hooves, think horses, not zebras. It's very easy to get distracted by the novel, to get distracted by the possibility of the big, sexy question and the big issue type of stuff. But actually, in reality, you're not dealing with zebras, you're dealing with horses. And you're dealing with
Mm.
horses 95% of the time. So keeping yourself grounded from that point of view. So in order, introspection, parameter setting, cohesive versus isolation, decision making, sorry, what was the next one that I'd said after that? Think outside the box or think outside safety. And when you hear hooves, think horses, not zebras. And
I'm not quite
overall,
sure I understand the horses zebra thing. Like a
so
horse is normal, like, but people assume it's a zebra when actually it's just a normal horse. Is that kind of what you
people
mean?
would say it's zebras when actually it's horses because
And
it's
you know that you know how to manage a horse because a horse is known. And yeah, okay,
and chances are is that it's horses. So don't kind of say the answer. Oh, what can you hear when you hear hooves? I hear zebras. Don't hear zebras. I hear horses. But
right,
you might
okay,
think zebras because it's a novel, it's a sexy thing. Coming back to what Tom Cooper had said, we get distracted by the sexy stuff. The sexy stuff is the
okay,
zebras. Actually, what the reality is the horses.
okay, nice. Oh, that was your
Cool.
short answer.
Yeah, I've just realised that was a long answer there. Sorry, apologies. It was yeah. No, can we just re-edit that bit out where I say short?
No,
Can you just Shez just edit in the
no.
word medium answer? Medium answer.
This is going to be a relatively medium answer. I'll allow that edit, but if it's only a really obviously different voice, like if it's like a real,
Medium.
I had slight. I'll try and give a very quick answer. This is a big topic, but I think it's definitely one that applies not just to different countries like continents like Africa and Asia. I think it applies even here in the UK with big business and little business. For me, don't assume big business has it right would be my first port of call. Just because it doesn't look like what you do or what you've seen in this big business, don't assume it's wrong. It's just different. Would be my first port of call. I think we always assume the big businesses have nailed it. And from my experience, they're just as hectic as small businesses, less organized areas, countries, whatever. So don't go in assuming that if you are from the big country that you got it nailed, big company, sorry, that you got it nailed and that they don't. I think you even see that in a continent point of view, like some countries are better than other countries at this, and some countries like we all just do things differently. I think if we go in with this arrogance that we're better than you at something, you're never going to learn. So I think for me, if you're on the side of the big company, then don't assume you have it right. Assume you have it wrong and see if you can learn anything from them, and then just see what happens because I guarantee you'll both learn something from each other. The second one for me, particularly when we start talking about supply chain, like customers or suppliers and contractors and so on, and I see this a lot in the UK. is just a distinct lack of collaboration. Like, remember that we are all trying to create an end product or an end service, whether that is a construction site, whether it's a chocolate bar, whether it's a freaking item of clothing. Like, it is not good for your brand if you found out that this chocolate bar was as a result of child labor. Like, it's not good if this construction site was being run off modern day slavery. Like, it's not good to kill someone on a construction site. You cannot deliver a good product without collaboration. And all I see, particularly in the UK, as I'll use it as an example, all I see as a result of, say, like the CDM regs, which I think was an attempt at trying to encourage collaboration, is just a slopey shoulder, your responsibility, my responsibility. It's like watching fucking Neo in the Matrix dodging bullets. It's just unbelievable.
How often do we come across stuff where big businesses said, "Oh, fill in the PQQ," and that's the end of it? And it's like they've just
Yeah.
washed their hands of all responsibility when that PQQ's been filled, and it's it's done now.
And
That's it, and that's the end of.
and it's an absolute joke. And people that just pressure onto these small businesses of saying like, oh, you're the principal contractor, when they're totally not the principal contractor. But like, you want to deliver this product, you want to deliver this project, right? Oh yeah, of course I do. We're the big brand, and it's our customer and it's our reputation. So why are you having this approach that's like really not contributory towards success? Why are you having this just like bully approach, not this collaborative approach? Like, so the amount of times I sit in construction meetings and I sit here and I'm just like, I feel like I have to say, hey guys, just all remember, we're all trying to deliver the same fucking project here instead of just tit for tat. Like, this is your job, this is my job. There's this arrogance that we all know better, and then this lack of collaboration. So for me, it's just like, it's good for all of us in the supply chain if we all are looking after each other and helping each other. Now, there is a line here though where we do have to say, no, that is not our responsibility, you need to do that. So I do think you have to define your lines. So that, and the reason I say that is because if you are a big business, there is a perception that you've just got this money tree and you could just throw money at everything and it'll fix everything. Ultimately, that's not the solution. You know, some businesses do need to learn how to fix it, but then they do need to fix it themselves. They can't just get it fixed for them. It's like kind of give a man a fish or teach him to fish, that kind of analogy. Like, you can't just throw money at something and then just go, yeah, go on, here's our risk assessment, off you go and fix it. Like, I think there is a line to say, this is our responsibility. We are going to go beyond this and help you by doing this, this, and this. But you do have to take some responsibility yourself to fix this. So, like, collaboration, 100% need it. Swallow your arrogance and learn from others. But also, like, let's all have a sense of our own self responsibility and our own ownership of something, and collaboratively work together to find a solution. But I don't think you can get that ownership unless it's in an environment of collaborative delivery of whatever you're trying to deliver. Would be my quick short answer that was nearly as long as yours.
I like it.
Mine was a medium response.
A medium.
Oh, fucking hell. Right, so mate,
great question, Mohammed. Thank you, genuinely, thank you for that, Mohammed. And for those of you listening, if you've got a question and you would like a short, medium, or long answer, please do let us know.
Maybe we should do the question at the beginning. I don't know. I think this structure is working really well. I really enjoy it. Let us know what if you do enjoy it. If you think what we're talking about is really cool and you want some help, go check out riskfluentltd.com or check out Risk Assessor Pro. Connect with me and Peter as well. We'll put all the links in the description below. We're always up for a chat. And guests are always welcome on this as well.
Absolutely.
I think it'd be cool some days to like go through this same agenda but with a random guest. And also, Pete, I was going to say, if I'm not around one week and you want to do this and bring someone else on, you can do that, mate. Nice. So crack on and bring someone else on.
Cool.
I've got a couple of people lined up that I'm going to try and get on that I think will be really interesting to get on. And they're not safety professionals. They're quite the opposite. Yes. So I'm looking forward to that. I need to get them in the diary. But thank you very much for your questions. We've still got about, I think, 30 questions left to answer, if not more. Just these are all still questions from the expo in Birmingham.
Okay. Well, I tell you
This
what,
is where I'm still.
should we have a quick fire questions episode next episode, do you think? And
I reckon we'll
like
get
quick
2
fire.
questions.
I'll put a stopwatch on. I promise you, I'll put a stopwatch on, and we'll go
That's
through
a
it.
good idea. Let's do that. Oh, I don't know, because I don't want to destroy all of our questions and we end up with no questions and no one sends
No, it's
anything
fine.
in.
No, we won't get through all of them. James, you've just heard us give a short answer to things. We won't get through all of them in an episode. It'd be fine.
Oh Jesus! Nice one. Right, I'm going to go. Thank you, Pete.
Cool.
That was a good
Take care.
discussion. See you later, bud.
See everyone.